Hello, and welcome to the Permission to Breathe podcast, a transformative space dedicated to providing a sanctuary where you can inhale deeply and exhale freely, embracing your grief journey unapologetically. I am your host, Dr. Tammy Isaac, here with you every Monday to offer comfort, guidance, and hope. Together we'll navigate this path, finding moments to pause, reflect, and breathe. Let's begin this journey side by side. Today's episode of Permission to Breathe is sponsored by Aurora's Grief Journey, my new children's book about navigating loss and finding comfort. Aurora's Grief Journey follows a young girl who's learning to cope with the loss of her grandfather. Through heartfelt storytelling and faithful activities, the book helps children understand their feelings and provides families with practical ways to heal together. If you're looking for a gentle resource to support a child through grief, this book is the perfect place to start. You can grab your copy today on Amazon. Thank you for tuning in. Now let's continue this journey of healing together. Welcome to the Permission to Breathe podcast, where we take a deep dive into our grief experiences that shape us, heal us, and challenge us to grow. I'm your host, Dr. Tammy Isaac. This month, we're honoring National Heart Health Awareness Month. It's a time to shed light on how important heart health is, not just physically, but emotionally and spiritually as well. So today, we'll be exploring a fascinating and little known condition called Takotsubo cardiomyopathy, and it's mostly commonly known as broken heart syndrome. If you've ever experienced deep emotional pain or trauma, you may already understand that grief doesn't just hurt mentally, but it can hurt physically too. So this condition is compelling because it reveals just how deeply connected our emotions and our bodies are. The name Takotsubo actually comes from a Japanese octopus catching pot. And it's called that because under extreme emotional stress, the heart has the ability to temporarily change its shape, and that shape resembles the Japanese octopus catching pot. Kind of crazy, but it's true. So we'll talk actually about what happens to the heart during this condition, why it often is mistaken for a heart attack, and more importantly, how emotional pain can show up in our bodies and when we don't fully process them, and that's why it's so important that we allow our emotions to take its course. So I'll also share some strategies to manage our emotional stress and to be able to promote our heart health awareness. Okay. So as a grief counselor and chaplain, I've seen how heartbreak can really affect both your mental and your physical well-being. So this month is a great opportunity for us to bring awareness to the importance of caring for our emotional and our physical hearts. So with that being said, let's take a deep breath. And let's dive into this important conversation about grief, trauma, and the heart. All right, let's dive into what exactly Takotsubo cardiomyopathy is. Now, the name might sound a little complex, but I promise it's easier to understand than it actually sounds. Takotsubo cardiomyopathy is a temporary heart condition that is triggered by emotional or extreme emotional stress or physical stress. Extreme emotional or physical stress. It is also called, as mentioned before, broken heart syndrome. Now, let's just imagine going through a devastating experience like the sudden loss of a loved one, traumatic accident, or even the end of, a relationship. For some people, this emotional shock can literally stun the heart, causing it to stop pumping blood the way that it normally would. Now, the condition was first identified in Japan back in the early 1990s, right? So doctors noticed that the heart of a person experiencing this condition temporarily takes on a unique shape, and one that resembles the takotsubo, which is a type of pot used to catch octopuses. So picture a pot with a narrow neck and a wide base. That's what the left ventricle of the heart can look like under severe stress. Now, here's where things get a little bit tricky. The symptoms of takotsubo can mimic a heart attack. People often experience chest pains, shortness of breath, and other alarming signs. Naturally, this will lead many people straight to the emergency room, and that's a good thing because the heart symptoms should always be taken seriously. However, when the doctor will run the test like an EKG, then they often will find that the arteries are not blocked, which would normally indicate a heart attack. Instead, what they find is this temporary ballooning of the heart muscle. That's when they realize it's something else entirely, like takotsubo cardiomyopathy. Now, the good news is that it's usually not fatal. With proper care, of course, most people can and will recover fully in a matter of just weeks or months, but it's also a powerful reminder of how much emotional pain can affect our physical bodies. I will say that after my mom passed, about a month after, I was having moments of shortness of breath, pain in my chest. Actually, it was starting before because I was on a very stressful job and I was already dealing with stress there. And then my mom was sick, and then she died actually unexpectedly. We wasn't expecting her to die. We knew she was ill, but we wasn't at the point where we believed that she would die. And so her death elevated the stress that I was already experiencing from my employer. And so I remember coming home from the hospital that morning and just sitting in the living room and just having chest pains and having to take an aspirin. And that went on for about a month, until one day I was sitting at my desk at work and I was just, trying to breathe regularly, but I was taking like these small, like quick breaths, and it made me very nervous. So I went to the emergency room and I was like, I'm having chest pains, but I looked normal, and they were like, are you sure? And I'm like, yes, I'm having chest pains and, a little struggle to breathe. And they did the EKG like 3 different times, called somebody else in to do it. And they said, well, what we know, I had several tests actually. What we actually know is that you're not having a heart attack, but your EKG is not reading normal. So I end up having to be admitted and had to stay overnight and do a lot of tests so that they can make sure that I was not actually in some type of heart failure or issue or illness that would affect my life. But afterwards we realized, in following up with other cardiologists and my primary, we were able to recognize that what I was experiencing was definitely some very extreme physical pain from the emotions of grief from the loss of my mother. And so while I didn't have like a scan for us to actually acknowledge, okay, this is takotsubo, I had definitely those experiences and can can say that I believe that that's what I was experiencing. Although I didn't let it go on for a long period of time, I immediately did what I needed to do. I got in therapy. I took some medication to relax me and my body so I wouldn't be so stressed. And I definitely had a support system. I let my family know what was happening, and then all of my friends. And we were able to help get me back into a healthy condition. And so it's very important that we do take care of our physical and also mental when we're going through very extreme challenges, as we're going through grief and the loss of people, places, or things that are very important, in our lives. So let's move on. So what exactly causes this? So researchers believe that it's linked to a surge of stress hormones like adrenaline and cortisol that ends up flooding the body during intense emotional distress. So this sudden stress storm ends up overwhelming the heart, causing it to malfunction temporarily. It's like the heart is saying, I can't take anymore, right? You ever heard somebody who's just overwhelmed in tears and just, I can't take it anymore. I can't take it anymore, right? It is the emotional pressure that's upon the heart that's causing the weight of what you're feeling to say, hey, I can't, this is too much. I can't take anymore. Don't give me any more bad news. I can't experience anything more rough than this, right? And I know that many of us, especially those who have experienced deep grief, may have felt, similar too, right? So that overwhelming pressure in the chest and the tightness when emotions become too much for us to bear is that feeling that we have when we're going through grief, and it could be possibly experiencing the Takotsubo cardiomyopathy, broken heart syndrome. So, and for some people, it's more than a feeling, it's literally a full-blown crisis. And I think at that point, we need to seek help. And if you need to go to the ER because you're having chest pains, I always say go to the ER, go to the doctor, go get checked, because you don't want to play with the heart. It is a major organ in your body. And whether that cause is coming from your grief or something else physically that you have not been taken care of or neglected, doesn't matter. Get to the doctor, get checked out, and make sure that you're okay. As I mentioned earlier, this condition is often confused actually with a heart attack because the symptoms are very similar. So you might experience chest pains that feel sharp or crushing, shortness of breath, and in some cases there is dizziness and or fainting. For many people, these symptoms hit suddenly and often right after a traumatic or emotional intense event. You might even feel like this is it, I'm having a heart attack. And honestly, you shouldn't take that lightly. As mentioned before, if you or someone ever experiences these symptoms, you should always seek immediate medical attention. It's better to be safe than sorry when it comes to your heart. Now, when you get to the hospital, there are several things that the doctors will do. Typically, they will do an EKG, and this test will end up checking the electrical activity of your heart, and they'll also check your blood for certain markers that might indicate that there's some damage of the heart. Now, here's where things can get interesting. In a heart attack, these tests would usually show blocked arteries or significant damage to the heart muscle. But with Takotsubo cardiomyopathy, the arteries are not blocked. Instead, doctors might notice that the heart's left ventricle has ballooned into that unusual shape that we talked about, the Japanese octopus pot, Takotsubo. It will balloon into that shape. And then what they may do afterwards, which is what I also did after my EKG, was have an echocardiogram, which is basically an ultrasound of the heart. And so this test will help them to be able to see how well your heart is pumping the blood. And during the Takotsubo episode of the broken heart syndrome, part of the heart muscle isn't contracting as it normally would or as it should. It's as if the heart has temporarily gone into a state of shock and refuses to move and pump the blood like it should, or contract as it should. Now, the exact cause of this reaction is still studied, but most experts agree that it's linked to an overwhelming surge of stress hormones. You know, you think of it like a flood, too much adrenaline or cortisol, rushing through your body, overwhelming your heart, and temporarily it will disrupt the function's heart. And this is why the broken heart syndrome, Takotsubo, is also known as a stress-induced cardiomyopathy, because it highlights just how powerful our emotional experiences really can be. So when we suppress our grief or our trauma or our emotional pain, our bodies may respond in ways that we've never expected and we probably never have experienced. And I often remind people that emotions are energy. They don't just disappear when you ignore them. They build up in the body, and sometimes they manifest physically. This is why it is so important for us to take care of both our emotional and physical well-being. We've got to allow our emotions to run the natural course that they were designed and created to run when we have life experiences. I believe that God gave us emotions as part of the healing mechanism because He knew that there would be times that our hearts would be broken and we needed a way to express so that our hearts would not become so overwhelmed that they would not be able to contract and pump and function the way that they should. A lot of times we go through these moments because we are not allowing ourselves to feel and experience what we're going through. It becomes as an initial shock. And one of the things why I always say you have permission to breathe is because when we get some shocking news, the first thing we end up doing is we'll do and we stop breathing because we're so overwhelmed. And you have to remind yourself and others, breathe, right? And then there are times that we're so overwhelmed and we're crying and we can't catch our breath. And before anybody can console you, the first thing they're saying is breathe, right? Take a moment, let things sink in and process through. Or allow your grief to have its way so that your physical and emotional well-being can be well. Think about the last time you experienced overwhelming stress. Maybe it was after a heartbreaking loss, a traumatic event, or even an intense argument with someone you care about. Your body probably reacted in some way. You might have felt your heart race, your chest tightening, your stomach churn. Those aren't just random actions, right? They're part of your body's stress response. So when you're under extreme emotional distress, your body floods itself with stress hormones like adrenaline and cortisol. And these hormones are meant to help you survive in a crisis. They speed up your heart rate, sharpen your focus, and prepare your body to fight or flee from danger. But when that stress is emotional and there's no actual physical threat, this response can overwhelm your body, especially your heart. For some people, that flood of hormones can temporarily stun the heart and disrupt its function. And this is what we see happening in the Takotsubo cardiomyopathy syndrome. Now, here's the thing. Grief, trauma, and emotional pain don't just live in our minds. They live in our entire bodies. And if you've ever felt like your heart was breaking, because Lord Jesus, I have before, that's because in a way it actually was. That's why sometimes like, oh, my heart hurts, right? Because it actually is hurting. Our hearts and brains are intimately connected. Wow. Just emotional pain can trigger physical symptoms, and those emotions, if they go unresolved, the body can carry that stress indefinitely, and your body could be in pain for the rest of your life, and you're just thinking, oh, it's just this old hip. It's just this old back pain. Oh, this knee when the weather change, when it get cold outside, and we accept those body pains that comes from our emotional stress as our normal day-to-day body functions and feelings, like it's supposed to be there, right? I see this all the time in my work as a chaplain and grief counselor. People who are grieving often report feeling exhausted, physically ill, or in some type of pain. And sometimes they say things like, I feel like I can't breathe, or my chest hurts. For some, these symptoms become so severe that they need medical attention, and the body is trying to communicate something. It's telling them that their emotional pain needs to be addressed, right? But because a lot of us don't understand that the emotional and the physical, the mental are all connected together, we immediately think, oh, just my body's breaking down, I'm getting older, or maybe I was moving too fast or something, and we don't give it the attention that it needs, right? Or we'll just go to the doctor and try to get something to fix with the physical, and we forget that there's an emotional and mental aspect of our health that needs to be taken care of. And that's why it's important to have a therapist or a counselor. Sometimes people need psychiatrists to talk through and maybe have medication to go along with your recovery until you're in a better space, okay? So it's important that we start paying attention to our bodies and paying attention to what's happening to us and what our bodies are trying to tell us so that we can be better. Okay. So this is why it's crucial for us to allow ourselves to feel and process emotions, and not to shun them or shy them and go, I'm not emotional, bottling up and pretending you're fine when you're not. It only prolongs the pain and increases the risk of physical complications, right? So we live in a culture that often teaches us to push through, to suppress grief, and to avoid crying because it makes us look weak. But in reality, embracing those emotions is one of the most powerful things that you could ever do for your health. You should try it sometimes. Just take a nice, good cry. God designed our emotions to be a part of our healing process. I have said this over and over again. Tears are our release. It is a way to allow the stress to flow through our body. Crying expresses our pain. It expresses our love and compassion for what we're lost and what we've gone through. It shares our grief with others. And these are all ways of healing. And the Bible reminds us that there is a time to weep and there's a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance. So when we allow ourselves to grieve fully, we give our hearts the chance to heal, right? So I want to encourage you today, if you're holding on to pain or grief, please find ways to release it. That might mean that you need to talk to a trusted friend, join a support group, journal, or pray, get a therapist or a counselor, whatever helps you process your emotions. Please, please, please lean into it. And if you feel like your emotional pain is taking a toll on your body, please do not hesitate to seek professional help. Remember, you are not alone, and there's no shame in asking for support. Are you grieving and feel like you're struggling alone? You don't have to walk this path by yourself. Book a virtual session with Dr. Tammy Isaac at Breathe Grief Counseling Center. Visit us online at www.breathegriefcounselingcenter.com. Dr. Isaac will help you put your emotions into words. She'll help you reduce the feeling of isolation. She'll help you understand that everyone grieves differently, and also help you prevent unhealthy coping mechanisms. Take control of your life with world-class counseling sessions today with Dr. Tammy Isaac. If there's one thing that I've learned in my work as a grief counselor and chaplain, is this: the heart remembers what the mind tries to forget. Let's say it again. The heart remembers what the mind tries to forget. So we often think that grief, trauma, and emotional pain, we often think of it as things we can mentally overcome. And we tell ourselves, I just need to stay busy, or if I stop thinking about it, it will go away. But grief doesn't function like that. It doesn't work like that. It's a weight that presses on both your body and your soul. And it's not, and if it's not acknowledged, it doesn't disappear. It just gets buried deeper and deeper until it finds another way to express itself. You have to understand that grief demands our attention, and you can keep pushing it and keep pushing it until it builds and builds, and it causes our bodies to crack under pressure. Your heart is carrying the emotional load, and when that load becomes too heavy, your body will start to crack. Now, in my experience, most people struggle with the idea that emotional pain can be part of their spiritual journey. Some even feel guilty for grieving, as if their faith should somehow protect them from suffering. You know, a lot of people don't want to talk about the spiritual side of grief and the healing that comes through that. But I do want to remind you that grief is not this sign of having weak faith. Grief is a human response to loss. And God walks us through that pain. And, in Psalms 34 and 18, it talks a lot about how David cried out to God in his anguish, pouring out his heart in moments of despair. We'll see that all over the Psalms, right? But in Psalms 34:18, it says that the Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. God doesn't expect us to suppress our grief, but he meets us right there in the midst of the brokenness, in the midst of our heartache, in the midst of our grief, and in the midst, he offers comfort and he offers healing. And in many ways, the process of healing begins with permission. We have to give ourselves permission to grieve, permission to feel, permission to breathe, permission to cry, right? Emotional pain isn't just, it is not something to fight against. It's something to move through. And as we move through it, we begin to release the burdens on our hearts. And this is why I'm such a strong advocate for creating space in our lives to process that grief. So whether through prayer, meditation, counseling, or simply sharing your story with someone that you trust, those moments of reflection allows your heart to find rest and recovery. And healing doesn't happen overnight. That's important to know. But with time and intentional care, your heart can regain its strength. For those of you who are supporting loved ones through grief, I encourage you to be patient and also be present. Because sometimes the most powerful thing that you can do is simply sit with someone in their pain without offering quick solutions or advice. Just let them know like they're not alone and that you're there for them. Okay. So how is Takotsubo cardiomyopathy treated, and what does recovery look like? Thankfully, in most cases, this condition is temporary And with the right care, many people fully recover within a few weeks to a month. But let's break down what that care involves. When you're diagnosed with Takotsubo cardiomyopathy, the first step is supportive care. Since it mimics a heart attack, doctors usually monitor you closely to make sure your heart is stabilized. There are often prescribed medications to help reduce the workload on your heart. These can include beta blockers to control your heart rate, ACE inhibitors to help your heart pump more effectively, and sometimes diuretics to reduce any fluid buildup that you may have. In the hospital, you might also undergo regular monitoring through EKGs and echocardiograms to be able to check your heart and how your heart is recovering. Now, rest is crucial during this time as well. So even though your heart may heal naturally, it also needs time to be able to care. Also needs time and care to regain its full strength. It's also important for us to know that recovery isn't just physical. As we've discussed, emotional and spiritual healing are just as important. So if emotional stress triggered your heart episode, you'll need to address that underlying pain so that you can prevent future problems. And this is where stress management comes into play. So let's talk about some of the strategies that can help. One of the most effective practices is deep breathing. And you hear me always say here, let's take a deep breath, and you have permission to breathe. You may have heard the phrase just breathe, but this isn't just like a cliche, or even me saying permission to breathe, or you have permission to breathe, or just breathe. These are not cliche things just to be saying. There's a meaning behind that. The thing is, when we take slow and deep breaths, it signals to our nervous system to calm down, and it begins to lower our heart rate and reduce our cortisol levels, and helps us to move out of the fight or flight response that can overwhelm the heart during those stressful moments. So here are a simple breathing exercise that you can try. So you want to breathe inhale deeply through your nose, and then you'll count to 4, and then you'll hold it for 4, and then you will exhale through your mouth for 6. And this is a technique that you can use whenever you feel, stressed or high levels of stress and feeling overwhelmed, that you do that. You can repeat that over and over again until you get to a place where you feel like your nervous system has slowed down and you're feeling back to a normal baseline. So you're inhaling for 4 through your nose. You're going to hold it for 4, and then you're going to exhale through your mouth for 6. And you can repeat that as often as you need to. Other strategies for recovery can also include practices like meditation, journaling, and also prayer. And these activities, they help you reflect, release, and restore a balance back into your life. And for those of us who find strength in faith, I encourage you to lean into prayer and scripture during these times. In Psalms 46:10, which is one of my favorite scripture. I don't even know if I want to say favorite, because I always say I don't have favorites. I just kind of lean into certain ones at certain times. But Psalms 46:10 is one that's important for me. It is to be still and know that I am God. And in moments of stillness, we find peace and reassurance that we are not carrying our burdens alone. And there is also a song by LeAnn Rimes on her album. I think it's called The Holy and Human, or I can't remember exactly what it is, but LeAnn Rimes has an album, maybe The Holy and Human or The Chant or something like that. But the song on the album, I think it's the second song on the album, and it's called Be Still. And I love that. It's done in a very meditative way. And so a lot of times when I am overwhelmed and feeling stressed and anxious, one of the things I do along with breathing is to play that song. And it's about 5 minutes, and maybe about 1 or 2 of those minutes, it's just silence. And I love that. And it just gives me time to kind of bring myself back into balance. And I have been known to replay that a couple of times, 2 or 3 times, to make sure that I get to a place where I've reset myself and I'm back to my balanced baseline and of not being overwhelmed by the things that I'm experiencing or going through. So along with doing my physical exercises or practices, I am also using my spiritual practice alongside my breathing to make sure that I am whole and complete in those areas. And also, counseling and therapy are incredible and valuable tools. Speaking with a grief counselor, therapist, spiritual advisor can help you process your emotional trauma that may have triggered your heart episode. And sometimes we need someone just to help us navigate those deep waters of pain and stress. I will say, however, whoever you do talk to, even if you're just talking to a spiritual advisor or a mentor or something, I would encourage you to really get with someone who specializes in the area of grief when it comes to that, because sometimes our spiritual advisors or mentors are not fully equipped to help deal with our grief. And there are some things that we go through in the grieving journey or season or period that doesn't make sense to somebody who's not grieving or have not experienced a depth of grief that would allow them to understand that this is just a moment in a period in your time that you may be doing some things that don't make sense. So you want to be able to be with somebody who understands what you're going through, who understands the grief journey, and will not judge you through your experience, but come alongside you and guide you on that path. Okay. Community support is another key part of healing. Don't be afraid to reach out to friends and family or support groups. I say this all the time. Healing is not a journey for you to have to walk alone. Whether it's sharing your story, receiving encouragements, or simply just spending time with people who uplift you, these connections can be a good source of strength and hope for you. And finally, be gentle with yourself. Be patient. I always say, give yourself grace. Recovery takes time. Okay, you break a leg, it takes time for that to heal. You have surgery, it takes time for that to heal. Nobody's expecting you to jump up and walk and get back to work. It is the same thing with having a grief and emotional traumas that you experience. They affect our body, and our body needs to be healed to get back into a groove of things. Now, you may have days when you feel strong and days when you feel fragile. Both are completely normal. Just trust the process and trust that your heart is capable of healing. And whatever you're feeling that day, you go with the flow of that. And don't judge one day based on the next day. Day by day, take one step at a time, one breath at a time. Okay? As we bring today's episode to a close, I want to thank you for taking this journey with me. We've explored Takotsubo cardiomyopathy, also known as broken heart syndrome, and the powerful connection between emotional pain and heart health. If there's one key takeaway from today, it's this: your heart is deeply connected to your emotional and spiritual well-being. Grief, trauma, and stress are not just mental experiences. They impact your entire body, including your heart. And that's why it's important to care for yourself holistically. You are more than just a physical body. Your mind, your heart, and your spirit are all connected in ways we're still learning to fully understand, So for those of you who may be carrying heavy emotional burdens right now, I want you to know that healing is possible. You don't have to carry your pain alone. Reach out for support, whether through prayer and counseling or talking to someone you trust. And remember that small acts of self-care like deep breathing and quiet reflection, or just taking moments to rest, can go a long way in restoring balance and strength. As we continue to honor National Heart and Wellness Month, I encourage you to be intentional about caring for both your emotional and physical heart. I want you to listen to your body. When life becomes overwhelming, pause, breathe, and seek the peace that comes from tending to your inner life. Healing doesn't come from ignoring pain, but it comes from acknowledging it and giving yourself permission to breathe and move through it. Now, before we go, I want to leave you with this quote from Brené Brown. Owning our story and loving ourselves through that process is the bravest thing we'll ever do. Be brave with your healing because you are worth it. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Permission to Breathe podcast. If you found this conversation helpful, I'd love for you to share it with someone who you think might need to hear it. And if you haven't already, please subscribe, leave a review, and follow me on social media for more content on healing, grief, and personal growth. Until next time, take care of yourself, breathe deeply, and know that you're not alone. I'm Dr. Tammy Isaac, and I'll see you in the next episode.